Anaxa has gone through another round of changes in version 3 of the latest beta update, but do these tweaks make him a stronger contender in the Erudition roster, or is he still falling behind? Let's take a deep dive into the adjustments and how they impact his role in Honkai Star Rail. The latest beta adjustments to Anaxa focus on shifting his power distribution, slightly reducing his raw scaling while improving his AoE potential and team synergy. His base ATK has been nerfed by around 7%, making his raw multipliers even more important. However, to compensate, his base speed has been increased by 3, allowing him to take turns faster and become more consistent in longer fights. His talent, which previously granted a 60% bonus damage boost, has been reduced to 40%, making his overall damage slightly weaker. But do not get angry, there is some positive news too. One of the biggest changes is how his skill now works. Instead of a flat bonus, it now gains additional damage based on the number of enemies hit. For each enemy, his skill receives a 15% damage increase, meaning he gets up to a 55% bonus when hitting 5 enemies at once. While this is a solid improvement for AoE fights, it also means that in single-target scenarios, he is noticeably weaker compared to his previous versions. His E2 has been revamped as well, now applying a 20% resistance shred to enemies. This is an interesting change since it improves his synergy with wind-based teams or any composition that relies on exploiting elemental weaknesses. His E4 has received a nerf, while his E6 has been buffed, meaning that his overall scaling at higher eidolons has slightly shifted, but at base, he remains largely the same unit. Right now, since whole Amphorius seems like balanced around AoE, meta, the Erudition role is highly competitive, with the Herta and Aglaea dominating the category. The Herta serves as a hypercarry with incredible frequent AoE attack synergy, making her an ideal pick for pretty much every player. Aglaea, on the other hand, is a flexible quantum remembrance AoE damage dealer, making her a perfect fit for HP meta. In comparison, Anaxa feels like a sub-DPS rather than a true Erudition main carry, especially with his new skill mechanic. While his damage output improves in AoE situations, he struggles in single-target fights, making him less reliable. Overall, his new E2 ability, which applies a 20% resistance reduction, makes him more useful as a secondary damage dealer in wind-based teams, but it doesn't fully solve his core issue. He still lacks a strong identity as either a main DPS or an outstanding sub-DPS. This raises the question of whether Anaxa is worth pulling. If you need an Erudition character for multi-target fights, he has some value, particularly at E2, where his resistance shred makes him a decent enabler for many teams. However, if you're looking for a DPS that performs that well in both single-target and AoE fights, he still isn't the best choice. Players who already own the Herta or will pull Aglaea likely won't need Anaxa, but for those missing a wind-based Erudition option, he could still have some utility, particularly in AoE scenarios. Overall, Anaxa's version 3 changes don't drastically alter his place in the game. They refine his role further, making him more focused on AoE fights while giving him a slight boost in team utility with his E2 resistance shred. However, whether this is enough for him to compete with existing Erudition options remains uncertain. He could still find a place in specific team setups, especially if future characters provide better synergy. But for now, he still seems somewhat underwhelming. But still, upcoming beta changes can change him significantly. What do you think of these changes? Are they enough to make Anaxa a viable pick, or does he still need more buffs? Let me know in the comments.